Okay, take a look at this. Seriously, have you ever seen a picture that looks so unreal you're just convinced it has to be fake? Well, this is one of those places. These are China's Rainbow Mountains, and trust me, the story behind them is even more wild than the view. So let's just get right to it, because that's the question, isn't it? How? It looks like someone took a giant paintbrush to the hillsides. But the truth? Well, the truth is way cooler than that. That's right. What you're looking at isn't some clever Photoshop trick or a massive art installation. This is a real physical place, a masterpiece that's been in the making for over 100 million years, sculpted entirely by the forces of our planet. All right, so where on Earth is this? We're heading to the Zhangye National Geopark in China's Gansu province. The locals have a name for this kind of landscape, Danxia, which has this beautiful translation. It means rosy cloud, and you can totally see why. You know, the best way to wrap your head around how these mountains were formed is to think of it like a recipe, a geological recipe, with very specific ingredients and a few key steps, all carried out over an absolutely immense amount of time. And here's that recipe. It really just boils down to 4 main parts. First, you layer all the ingredients. Then, you squeeze them with incredible force. After that, you add the color. And finally, you carve the whole thing into the shape you see today. So let's break down each step. Step 1, layering. Okay, picture this. Starting about 114 million years ago, this entire area was just a massive inland basin. And for millions and millions of years, rivers and lakes kept depositing different layers of sand and silt, kind of creating this giant geological layer cake. Now for step 2, pressure. This is where things get really dramatic. That nice, flat, peaceful layer cake was about to get hit by one of the most powerful forces on the entire planet. What's so wild about this timeline is the scale of it all. Around 55 million years ago, the Indian tectonic plate just slammed into the Eurasian plate. Now get this, the collision itself was over 2,000 kilometers away. But the force was so immense, it literally buckled and lifted this entire region. And this shows you exactly what happened. That tectonic collision took our flat layer cake and basically tilted it, folding the layers and shoving them upwards, almost vertically. For the very first time, all those ancient colorful stripes were exposed to the open air. Which brings us to step 3, the color. This is the magic, right? This is what everyone wants to know. Where do these impossible reds and yellows and greens actually come from? You're not gonna believe it, but this entire, vibrant, ridiculous palette, it pretty much all comes down to one element, iron. The whole range of colors is just the result of that iron reacting to different ancient environments as each layer of sediment was being laid down. And this is so cool. Each color tells a story about the ancient climate. So a deep red stripe of hematite, that tells us the layer formed in a dry, oxygen-rich desert. But a green stripe, that means the iron was in an oxygen-poor environment, like the bottom of a deep lake. It's literally a history book written in minerals. So, finally, we get to step 4, the sculpting. The tectonic plates did all the heavy lifting, they raised the canvas. But all the fine details? Those were carved by the patient hands of nature itself. For the last 24 million years, the landscape has been shaped by these 3 main tools. You've got seasonal rains carving out the deep valleys, powerful winds scouring and polishing the surfaces, and these crazy temperature swings that cause the rock to literally crack and peel away. So we've got this incredible 100 million-year-old story of creation. You'd think that would make these mountains tough as, well, rock. But the reality is, this masterpiece is unbelievably fragile. Which brings us to its modern-day story, the fight for preservation. This was a quote from a tourist who trespassed, went off the path, and filmed themselves kicking up the colored sand for social media. They were wrong about the age, it's millions of years old, but they were right about the destruction. So just how delicate is it? Well, the sandstone is so soft and the ecosystem so fragile that a single footprint, one careless step off the walkway, can take more than 60 years for nature to erase. 60 years! Thankfully, this treasure is now heavily protected. There are strict pathways, a ticketing system that can actually blacklist vandals, and in 2020, it was officially designated a UNESCO Global Geopark. All of this is in place to try and preserve it for the future. Because at the end of the day, what we're looking at isn't just a pretty picture for Instagram. It is an open textbook of our planet's history.
Each stripe is a chapter about ancient climates, continental collisions, and the slow, patient work of erosion.
And that really leaves us with one last thought. This 100-million-year-old story is still being written, and we are now a part of it. The question is, how will our brief time here be recorded in the stone? Are we going to be a chapter of preservation or one of loss?